Hello, friends. I am back. Ooh, Nelly. My goodness. So, I was being feasted on outside. I apologize. I tried to I tried to stay, y'all. I ran out of off spray. I ran out of off. And I tried to stay outside, but I couldn't because I was getting bit up bad. So, have to find something to calm my little bites. To find something to calm my bites after I finish reading with you guys. Anywho, as I was saying, I'm glad I got to read that book, Way Past Worried. That was such a good book. Here's the cover. Such a good book. Way Past Worried. I'm so glad I got to read that with you all because when you have somebody who understands what it's like to be worried, it's good to have someone to talk to deal with that. Like, so the reason why I really don't like storms is because um at my house we experienced a tornado before. And now every time there's a really big storm, I'm like, oh, could there be another tornado? Um, could it blow down the tree in my yard? Could it blow down other people's trees? Could something happen to the house? And then my worries start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, just like our friend in the story. And yesterday that had me too. As I was watching radar and watching the news, I was like, oh, the storm looks pretty big. I see the trees swing. I hear thunder and the lightning. Like, what if it could be really bad around here? And so my worries started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then I ended up in the basement. And then, just the time when I thought that the storm was supposed to get really, really bad, it was over. I looked at the radar and there was nothing. They said it had passed by us. But I had my cousin who always knows when she's worried about a storm, Miss Hope goes in the basement. So she leaned down. She said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm all right." And that helped me. It always helps when someone understands. And then, especially if you're worried and they're worried, and then you can both talk about it, it's easier to get past all of that worry, especially if you are like our friend in the story. You're used to going to the same places with your brother, and now, oh no, I gotta go by myself? I'm not used to that. Or our friend in the tree. I'm in a new neighborhood and I don't have any friends. I was invited to this party. I don't know if I really want to be there by myself. And so it's good that they found each other and learned that, you know what? Maybe we can be courageous, even though we may be worried or scared. And we can be courageous together. It's much easier to be courageous with someone else than just by yourself. So sometimes when you're worried, maybe you might want to talk about it to someone. Or if you see that someone else is worried or scared, you can share with them, you know what? I've been there before. I understand what that's like. Maybe we can talk about it and maybe we can be courageous together. And they went to the party and had a good time. That's what happens when you talk about it to somebody. You realize, you know what? Maybe my worry isn't as big as I thought it was. Maybe it's not going to be as bad as I thought it was. And I can still have fun and I can relax and I can be courageous. Very good book. So, my young ones, my older young ones, my parents, my teacher friends, my parent teacher friends, all friends of Miss Hope's Reading Hour. If you know someone who's worried about some things, worried about doing something new or going to a new place, listen, share with them this story, Way Past Worried, by Haley Edelman. It might help them. And I'll let you in on a secret. You're never too old to read a children's book. And another secret, they teach a lot of good lessons. Like this one. All right, my friends, let us get to these unteachables. Okay. So far, the last time we were in the unteachables, Mr. Kermit is trying to be a better teacher. He's getting to work on time, y'all. He's getting to work on time. And he found out that the students, they actually like getting the puffy tails on the Good Bunnies board. He thought, wait a minute, they're in 8th grade. They don't care about getting puffy tails for good behavior. Yeah, they do. He finally read Kiana's paper and realized, wait a minute, she is much smarter than everybody else in this class. Why is she here? She might get found out soon that she's not supposed to be in the class and she's actually not registered in school. But he gave her an A plus and gave her a puffy tail. And they're like, wait a minute, what did she get a puffy tail for? And he's looking like, wait a minute, what do you mean? You gonna care about this stuff? So they started listing all types of good stuff they did, even stuff at their house. And he had to start giving them puffy tails. And Jake Terranova came to visit him in his class. Remember the student who was at the center of the cheating scandal with the test? But Mr. Kermit had to take the fall for it. So he came to apologize and said, you know what, Mr. Kermit, anything you want me to do to help with the students, I'm willing to do it. Because he wanted to make amends for Mr. Kermit having to take the fall for him selling the test answers to his classmates. So they're going on a field trip to Jake Terranova's car dealership so he can teach them some things about math and maybe business and fixing cars and things. So that's where we are in chapter 17 of The Unteachables. All right. We've been invited to a tour of the repair shop. I regurgitated Emma's reasons for why this is a good idea. Back up, Zachary. I've known you for a long time. Why would you go anywhere near Jake Terranova? I sighed. Emma found him at some country club shindig. She's a serious one. She told him Spirit Week kerfuffle and how it dredged up what happened. Now he wants to make amends. The principal folds her arms and you want to give him an opportunity to clear his conscience? It's not me, I admit, it's the kids. They came alive when he walked into the room. They consider him some kind of celebrity. Listen, I know they're awful, but what we did to them is just as awful. Are we really going to keep them cooped up like prisoners until they can be the high school's headache? If there's a chance for them to have a real education, we have to take it. And if that means Jake Terranova, then so be it. She looks at me for an uncomfortably long minute. The last time I heard words like that came from a young teacher I used to work with. A teacher named Zachary Kermit. That person is gone forever for her. And he's never coming back, which is a good thing because he was an idiot. All right, you are bus. Scribbles a signature on the requisition form and leans back in her chair, her expression sober. One more thing, Zachary. You've probably already noticed that Dr. Thaddeus isn't really your biggest fan. Well, the Zellas didn't do anything to change that. I don't lose sleep over what he thinks. That's mostly because I have such terrible insomnia that there isn't much sleep for me to lose. But I don't mention that to Christina. You didn't hear this from me, she persists, but I think he's going to try to after you after your early retirement. I shrug. He's done it already. I know why I got saddled with the unteachables. He wants me to quit. He'll see his own ears first. There's another way, she reminds me grimly. One wrong step, and he'll fire you. Don't give him cause. I'll protect you as much as I can, but I'm not the superintendent. He is. He and never underestimate how much power that gives him. I nod, take Buff's authorization, and get out of there. It's the cheating scandal, still haunting me after all these years. Thaddeus will never forgive me for it. I thought Jake Terranova was back. Correction, he never left. Chapter 18, Kiana Ruby. Top 4 reasons why my half-brother Chauncey is like Vladimir, the lizard in Miss Fountain's class. The smell. Dirty diapers and baby puke. Enough said. Vladimir's terrarium after the weekend is no perfume factory either. The noise. Chauncey's howling has the edge in volume, but Vladimir's high-pitched squeaks are even more piercing. It goes without saying that both of them are spoiled by too much attention. That's Stepmonster's fault in Chauncey's case. For Vladimir, it's Miss Fountain's 7th graders, and lately, us. When he wants somebody to feed him a dead cricket, which is all the time, the cheeping and chirping are at a frequency that feel like a miniature blender at the center of your brain. The teeth, they both have 0. Okay, Vladimir probably has more than that, but you don't know they're there until he nips you. And to be fair, Chauncey does have a couple of chompers breaking through, bottom front. It's pretty cute, actually. The time suck. That's the biggest similarity between them. Dealing with Chauncey is a 25-hour-a-day job, mostly for Stepmonster, but also for Dad and me. If you leave him alone for 10 seconds, he'll find a way to stick his drool-covered finger into an electric outlet, light himself on fire, and roll down at least one flight of stairs. Vladimir is every bit as impossible to ignore. When he starts squeaking, you go running. And he's not satisfied with just anybody. These days, the attention he craves is from Aldo. Leave it to Vladimir to love the least lovable person in the whole school, except maybe Elaine. Maybe it's the red hair. It's hard to ignore. Anyway, I shouldn't really complain that Stepmonster is so distracted. If it wasn't for Chauncey, she might call up school to ask how I'm doing and get told, Kiana who? The last thing I need is to get put in regular classes and have to break in 8 new teachers just when I'm starting to get the hang of Mr. Kermit. Now that Ribbit's doing real teaching, I don't even have to make things up when Dad and Stepmonster ask how's school. I have something to tell them. There are things going on in room 117, things beyond worksheets and crossword puzzles. Hang on a sec. Back up. My father stops me at dinner. What are these puffy tails you keep talking about? What kind of science? Some kind of science unit? Right, I stammer. Animal anatomy. If you're going to be dissecting some poor little bunny, I don't want to hear about it, Stump Monster puts in, shoveling strained bananas into Chauncey's waiting mouth. And we're going on a field trip tomorrow, remember? I move quickly. To a rabbit laboratory, Dad asks. No, this is different. We're going to Terra Nova Motors as Jake Terra Nova's personal guests. I don't know what we're supposed to learn there, but the class is actually pretty psyched about it. One of the downsides of being in SCS 8, besides the obvious, is that you're stuck in the same room all day. So the change of scenery will do us good. Our two chaperones are Mr. Kermit and Miss Fountain. Mr. Kermit has no choice, but it's really nice of Miss Fountain to volunteer, since her own classes have to have a sub today. As it turns out, they get Mrs. Landsman, aka Dawn of the Dead. Poor Vladimir. If he squeaks too loud, she'll probably gut him with a protractor and barbecue him on a rotating spit in the home and careers room. The bus is just a minibus, and it's pretty uncomfortable with a whole class packed into one side and a lane all by herself on the other. Aldo is getting mad because Barnstorm keeps thumping the back of his seat with one of its crutches. It doesn't bother Raheem. Though. He falls asleep as soon as we make the right turn out of the school driveway. Mateo stands in the aisle, knees bent, working on his balance, just like the Silver Surfer from Spider-Man. Miss Fountain seems pretty uncomfortable with the bad behavior, and especially the fact that Mr. Kermit isn't saying anything. So she tries to change the subject by talking about how SCS 8 should participate in the district science fair. She's always coming up with suggestions for our class, like the Good Bunnies thing and inviting us for circle time or to help out with Vladimir. Sometimes Mr. Kermit lets her push him around a little, but not today. No, he says simply. I think this field trip has put him in a bad mood. It's pretty obvious that Jake Terra Nova isn't his favorite person. But it's a fantastic competition, Miss Fountain persists. Teams enter from every school in the district. There are prizes. First place winners get an extra 10% added to their grades on the state science assessment. It's a win-win. Not for us, Mr. Kermit replies firmly. His expression says it all. Do these really look like the kinds of kids who will come in first place at anything? It bugs me a little. Not that I'm dying to get mixed up in any science fair. Me being a short timer, meaning she's not going to be in this school. It's part of his bad mood. The other kids talk about Jake Terra Nova like he's some kind of superstar. As we pull up to Terra Nova Motors, I finally understand why. It has to be the biggest car dealership I've ever seen. And that includes LA, where everything is kind of supersized. Mr. Kermit's ex-student owns all this? That's pretty cool, especially when Mr. Terra Nova himself comes out to welcome us. Hey guys, glad you could make it. Come on inside. Like we're longtime friends, not random middle schoolers getting our moment with the big boss. We tour the showroom first, which, I have to admit, is pretty fun. All the vehicles are shiny, new, and top of the line. We try out every seat in every car, front, back, and third row, and even climb into the payloads of the pickup trucks. For the first time since blundering into SCS 8, I feel like I could be with any class of kids in the country, not Greenwich Middle School's dreaded unteachables. Ribbit sees it too. His bloodshot eyes are half open instead of the usual 25%. Or maybe he's just on the alert because Mr. Terranova is here, and this is enemy territory. Miss Fountain, the Prius driver, is looking disapprovingly at the giant SUV and the light trucks that dominate the showroom where Mr. Terranova walks when Mr. Terranova walks up to her. I'm wondering if she's going to lecture him on the environment. Instead she says, "This is a wonderful thing you're doing. I don't know if you can tell, but some of these kids have special issues." "You think?" He grins irresistibly. "My floor manager just pulled a sleeper out of the trunk of that Cadillac." "That's Raheem," Miss Fountain explains. "He doesn't get enough sleep at home, but he's a talented artist, sensitive and observant. They've got their quirks. They're good kids, though." Okay, maybe good is too strong of a word. Gotcha. He's watching Barnstorm poking tires with his crutches. "Hey, Mr. Terranova," Parker approaches. "I want to take the red Mustang out for a test drive." Right. Funny kid. "No, really, I have a license." Parker digs a mangled ID out of the pocket of his jeans. "It's a provisional license, Parker," Miss Miss Fountain reminds him gently. "This is 100% farm business," Parker promises. "I just remembered I've got to swing home and pick up a load of turnips for the Safeway." Looking for a lifeline, she calls out, "Mr. Kermit, I think it's time for lunch." It's hard to get a handle on what Ribbit thinks of all this. On one hand, it's obvious he can't stand his former student because of what happened in the past. On the other, that must have been forever ago. Mr. Terranova was a seventh grader, even younger than we are. He's an adult now, running a big business, and he's trying to make amends. Why can't Mr. Kermit see that? We brought bag lunches, but Mr. Terranova ordered pizza for everybody in the dealership dining room. Only Ribbit turns him down, like anything from his old nemesis would turn to poison as soon as it enters his mouth. The employees are really friendly, and we get to ask them questions. I want to know about fuel efficiency standards. Barnstorm wants to know, when you sell a car, do you get to keep the money? Aldo asks the lease specialist, how long did it take to grow that mustache? Elaine gets into the cookie platter pages set aside for customer appreciation week. After lunch, we tour the service department. That's where the field trip starts to get really good. Motor vehicles are such a huge part of life, especially in a place like LA, where you have to drive pretty much everywhere. People take it for granted that their cars will work, like they're powered by some kind of magic. How often do we ever get to peek under the hood at the machinery that makes it happen? Mr. Terranova leads us onto a raised catwalk, and we can look down on at least a dozen vehicles on lifts in various stages of being taken apart and put back together again. The noise is a cacophony of revving engines, pneumatic tools, and the clang of metal on metal. The smell of mixed oil and grease with a little bit of exhaust, whatever the ventilation fans miss. Yet there's almost a kind of grace and a rhythm that's hard to resist. It feels productive, like necessary work is being done. Parker is practically drooling, and even Alda was leaning over the railing, fascinated. It's the first time I've ever seen him interested in the son, and he looks older, more mature. Mick was babbling about how the shot reminds him of the engine room of the USS Enterprise on the Star Trek. The on Star Trek. Raheem is sketching furiously napkin from the lunchroom. Elaine is watching in rapt attention while double fisting stolen cookies from her jacket pockets. Suddenly, she clutches the rail in distress. For a second, I wonder if she's trying to hype her reputation by ripping it free from the catwalk. But no, her cheeks are pink, her eyes satisfied. Sharp staccato choking sounds reach me over the clamor of the shop. Mr. Kermit pounds on her back, but to no avail. I run up the lane and reach around her, perform the Heimlich maneuver, positioning my hands below the ribcage, like they told us in life-saving class back in California. Once, twice, no good. 3 times, heads up, bellows a wild voice. I glance over my shoulder, just in time to crutch, just in time to see a crutch hurtling toward me in a home run swing. I dropped to the metal floor of the catwalk. A split second before, the wooden shaft would have taken my head off. It slams across Elaine's broad back, and with a thud that momentarily drowns out the noisy shop, splits in two. Everybody waits for her to crumple to the catwalk unconscious. But that's not what happens. Elaine each instead, chunk cookie comes flying out of her mouth, sails over the rail, and drops into the half dismantled motor of a vintage Corvette. The mechanics look up in horror. What was that? Mr. Terranova asks urgently. I confirm that Elaine is no longer choking. She's okay. The car dealer looks at me like I'm totally missing the point. But what did she spit in the end? Elaine smacked it. I think it was a ginger snap. The word is like a panic. Guys, he calls down to his team. I want that engine taken apart and every piece wiped clean now. I'm mystified. What's so bad about a ginger snap? Sugar, he exclaims in agony. It's the last thing you want in a car engine. It dissolves gas and ends up everywhere. If word gets around that I sold a car with a sugar tank, I'm finished business. Mr. Kermit is beaming from ear to ear. It's the first time I've seen him so happy. And what did it take? Problems for Terranova. I actually feel a little guilty. I saw Elaine pocketing those cookies, and I kept my mouth shut. I may be a timer, but you don't have to be at our school very long to know that Elaine rhymes with pain. The field trip breaks up to that. Mr. Nova is focused on the Corvette, so he's not playing host anymore. Plus, Barnstorm is complaining of his mobility with only one crutch. Then you shouldn't have busted the other one over Elaine's head, Aldo tells him. But back, not her head, Barnstorm retorts. I saved her life, man. She'd better remember that while deciding who her next victim's going to be. You just cost yourself a puffy tail, Buster, Mr. Kermit snapped. Barnstorm is very no fair. I saved a life and I'm out of watch and a puffy tail. What could justice? He should earn a puffy tail for helping her and lose it for being mean, Parker put. But at least then he breaks even. We should all get a puppy except Elaine, although reasons, excuse me, our reasons. You know, for barfing a cookie into the Corvette, this seems to be idea for Ness. Elaine tosses a glance in those direction, and he decides to stand on the other side of a tall cargo van. It's too bad that such a great field trip has to end on a note. But by then, the minibus is waiting outside, so there's nothing to do but get on it. Halfway back to school, Miss Fountain gets a call on her cell phone. It's the dealership. It's a middle school boy. Oh no, there's a middle school boy asleep on the couch in the showroom. Mr. Kermit does a head count. Raheem, he reports, we have to go back and get him. We turn around. Wait, I frown at Miss Fountain. How come they called you? I mean, how does G. Terranova have your number? She blushes the color of Chauncey's diaper rash. Ho, ho, ho! We're in there, my friends. We may have found out some information. Mr. Terranova and Miss Fountain, they may be more than just friends. Well, my friends, thank you for coming back if you did. I had to come inside and being chomped by a whole bunch of insects outside because I ran out of my off spray. So glad I got to read these books with you today. They were great. Talking about how to deal with storms, not only natural ones, but ones in your life, and how to talk to somebody if you're worried or help someone that you know is worried. And the field trip, and at the end, a little tidbit of information about Miss finding Mr. Terranova. Well, it was a very eventful Miss Hope's Reading Hour. I look forward to seeing you all on our Marvelous Monday broadcast. Until then, my friend, have a great weekend. Make sure you get some spray if you're going to be outside so you don't get chomped by insects. And I will see you on Marvelous Monday, right back here on Miss Hope's Reading Hour. Until then,